Welcome into the PHNX D-backs podcast. My name is Jesse Friedman. I am your host throughout the week because Derek Montilla has ditched us, as we said yesterday. But today it's not just me. Today we have special guest Jack Sommers from Inside the Diamondbacks joining us. Jack, I know you were with us, what was it, about a week ago? And now I'm here making you do this again, so we appreciate it.
Well, you caught me on a week where I had nothing going on.
There we go.
It worked out well.
We all have a little more time on our hands this time of year without baseball in our lives. But yeah, thank you all for being here with us. Apologies for the delay for joining us here live. We had some renovations happening in our other studio that wound up getting pushed back further than we liked. We had to wait for this one to open up. So to all of you who stuck with us and waited around, we really appreciate it. I do want to start with one quick note before we get into the meat of today's show. Yesterday, we talked about one Pavin Smith and this amazing video of him interacting with his parents and writing this beautiful letter to his parents and revealing that he had paid off their mortgage. It was an incredible sentiment. We got a Mailbag Monday question about it, or I guess Mailbag Tuesday question about it. It turns out that actually happened a number of years ago, and that video had just resurfaced within the last couple of days. We did. I feel utterly embarrassed and incompetent to say this, but yes, we did a show yesterday talking about that video as if it had happened like 3 days ago. So apologies for that. In retrospect, we had a few people reach out and let us know what was going on there. But you know, moments like that, Jack, they live on. You can relive those things year after year. They never get old.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was after he was signed. He used a signing bonus for that. That was right. December 26th of 2017 that was first posted. But I've actually talked to him about that.
Yeah.
And as recently as this past summer, and just kind of let him know, like, hey, that was something that always made me root for you. And he's a good guy. He's a really good person. And so in the Christmas spirit, it fit. It worked.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, we're still want to give Pavin Smith his flowers. Just note that happened 6 years ago, not 2 days ago. But with that, we want to spend a lot of time on today's show looking ahead as far as the Diamondbacks DH search, whether it makes more sense for them to target a lefty or righty. We're going to look at what their bench could look like in 2024. A lot to get into. And tis the season, I should say, for looking ahead, presented by our friends at Arizona Lottery. That's exactly what we're going to do. And on that note, I sort of just alluded to it. We talked with Diamondbacks general manager Mike Hazen just a few days ago about the Lourdes Gurriel Jr. re-signing. And there's been this assumption that's been made now for a number of weeks. I think there's been some reporting behind it as well that the Diamondbacks were targeting an additional right-handed bat, likely a DH type, in order to plug into this lineup and give the team a more regular look at DH rather than kind of using it as a revolving door. But Mike Hazen on Friday told us that it wasn't necessarily just a righty. It could also be a left-handed option that the Diamondbacks look at to add there. Here is an audio clip of what Mike had to say on that note on Friday.
Yeah, we're still looking to add a position player to the lineup. Now that we have Flores and Gurriel, I'm not so sure that it has to just be right-handed. I think we have more flexibility into how this would come together. If we had done another bat in a different way, maybe it would have been more right-handed. But I think now we have flexibility if we're going to add more to the offense, to do it either righty or lefty.
Jack, your initial thoughts when you heard this? I'm curious.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. He'd been talking about right-handed bats all along, so that was a bit of a curveball for sure. And especially, as we're going to get into, when you really start to break it down, it's kind of tough to see how they make it work. One point that is important to note, though, that Mike has always talked about utilizing the DH spot to get guys off their feet and give them rest. that they're not necessarily wedded to the idea that they have to have a full-time DH.
Sure.
So maybe that's where that comes into play as well, as far as giving him some extra flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you were to get a lefty who's a guy who would sit against left-handed pitching, that would open up some opportunities for someone else to occupy that spot against righties or against lefties. That would certainly make some sense. I thought it'd be interesting to look back at how the Diamondbacks fared against lefties and righties this past season. I was at least a little surprised digging into some of the numbers. This past season, the Diamondbacks had a 99 WRC plus. League average is 100. WRC plus is just a hitting metric that we're all very fond of around here. So basically right around league average against righties. That ranked 17th in baseball. Against lefties, the Diamondbacks had a 92 WRC plus in 2023. So they were definitely better against righties than they were against lefties.
Yeah, for sure. It was interesting. I mean, obviously there's a lot of left-handed bats that were forced to maybe play a little bit more than they should have, and put up some pretty big zeros. And then, there were some guys that they just simply expected to do a little better against lefties that didn't come through.
Yeah. Yeah, digging into some of those names, the D-backs gave Nick Ahmed 122 plate appearances against lefties, and he had a 7 WRC plus, which is very, very poor. Very, very poor. Alec Thomas, not much better than that, and 81 plate appearances against lefties, a 12 WRC plus, also just kind of off the charts. Like, you can't really start a guy like that against lefties in general. Pavin Smith, a 32 WRC plus and 42 PA against lefties. Geraldo Perdomo, although he's a switch hitter, he has fared significantly better against righties in his career. He had a 62 WRC plus and 71 plate appearances. Also interesting, Tommy Pham, after coming over in the trade, actually did a lot better against righties than he did against lefties, only a 77 WRC plus there. So you add all these numbers together and you've got something like, 350 to 400 plate appearances of just really poor production between all these different guys against left-handed pitching. And that kind of seems to be the cause of this. The D-backs had a number of hitters who are actually very good against lefties. Christian Walker, a 141 WRC plus, Gabby Moreno, 139, Ketel Marte, 138, Lourdes Gurriel, 121. That's a pretty formidable group of four to have in your lineup every day against lefties. It's just all of those negative producers kind of counterbalance that and actually made the D-backs well below average against lefties when all was said and done.
Yeah, and it was pretty crushing. I mean, like Nick Ahmed, the only buddy he had ever hit was left-handed pitching. I mean, up until last year, he was pretty good against lefties.
Yeah, and this year he had a 111 against righties, and then it really struggled against lefties. It was weird.
They always knew that Perdomo wasn't probably going to hit well against lefties, so that really messed up the plans pretty good. So it was worth a shot when they brought up Lawler. Unfortunately, Lawler didn't hit towards the end of last year either. But, it was really understandable why. It wasn't just that Ahmed wasn't hitting. It was that he didn't hit lefties at all.
Yeah.
Just inexplicable. And then you have Alec Thomas. I mean, it's still not there against left-handed pitching. Over the last 2 years combined, that WRC plus is 22.
Yeah.
They really need to help him figure that out. He's going to lose a lot of playing time again if he starts off the year, just failing against lefties to that degree.
And I know you were looking at some numbers from the postseason against lefties for Alec Thomas, and maybe there was some people had it in their head that Alec Thomas was better against lefties in the playoffs. It doesn't seem like that was actually the case.
He was 2 for 12.
Okay. Yeah.
He was 2 for 12. He didn't homer. It's not. That's according to a quick search I did on Baseball Savant. But
right.
Right now, Alec Thomas has a swing flaw that he has to overcome. It's whale and bail, right? I mean, he just steps out of the box and opens up his stance too much and kind of throws the bat out there. And until he closes that up consistently, he's just not going to be able to hit a left-handed pitcher.
So it seems like the D-backs have several hitters who against lefties you'd really like to not have to play, frankly. Obviously, Nick Ahmed and as of now, Tommy Pham are not factors for the 2024 season. But Alec Thomas, really poor numbers there against lefties. Pavin Smith, probably a guy you only want to start against righties at this point. Geraldo Perdomo, if there's a way to avoid starting him against lefties, that would probably be good as well. As far as right-handed hitting is concerned, the D-backs actually didn't have as many good hitters at the top Corbin Carroll had a 146 WRC plus against righties, was by far the team's best hitter there. After that, Ketel Marte at 122, Christian Walker 114. And then they just had kind of a bunch of guys right in the middle. Geraldo Perdomo was 105 against righties. Lourdes Gurriel right at 100. Tommy Pham right at 100. Gabby Moreno and Alec Thomas both at 86, a little below average. So it seems like against lefties, things are just more polarized. You've got some guys who are really, really good, some guys who are really, really poor, who kind of wound up balancing that and actually making the D-backs relatively poor overall against lefties. Whereas as far as righties go, the D-backs were better overall, but there was just sort of a bunch of guys kind of right in the middle and Corbin Carroll sort of standing out at the top.
Yeah. I mean, I think that things will normalize a little bit. I would expect a little bit better performance against righties from Lourdes. I think that should come up a little bit more.
Sure.
And hopefully Gabby, I mean, over the last part of the year, he improved so much. So I would think that we get a full season of the latter day Gabby Moreno is gonna help that situation.
So if we look at, we put together, and I know the moment I put this on the screen, people are going to get angry at how I formed this lineup, but we're going to do it anyway. This is a projected lineup, just a way too early look at what the Diamondbacks lineup against righties would look like if the season started today. If we put that up on the screen, this is sort of going off of what the team did in the postseason. That's why I have Gabby Moreno hitting third. I don't know if that would continue into 2024, especially against righties. But we have Corbin Carroll in the leadoff spot. There's a 146 there. Ketel Marte in the 2-hole. Gabby Moreno in that 3-hole. Again, only an 86 WRC plus against righties. I don't know if you want to keep him in that spot. Then it's Christian Walker, Lourdes Gurriel. Eugenio Suarez steps in. I have him in the 6th hole. He was a 99 WRC plus, basically right at league average against righties in 2023. And then we have Alec Thomas, Pavin Smith, and Geraldo Perdomo kind of rounding things out. This is sort of where the D-backs stand right now against righties. Again, the order of the lineup is certainly up for debate, but this is about as good of a lineup as I could put together against righties right now. And so I don't know. When you look at this, Jack, what do you see? What are your thoughts about what areas they might want to improve here?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's going to be really important that Eugenio Suarez has a bounce back year, right?
Yeah.
Last year was a down year for him, as Mike Hazen said, if he's coming off a good year, you're not going to get him for what they did. So, his
True.
bounce back is really important, and then further development from the young guys, right? I mean, the whole theory is young players improve, young players get better. They need to get better.
All right, now let's look at it against lefties. I imagine a slightly different lineup. We saw the D-backs, for whatever it's worth now. Ketel Marte in the playoffs would hit leadoff against lefties, and then Corbin Carroll would step in the 2-hole. Gabby Moreno in that 3 spot that actually could make some sense going into 2024 since he hit 352, I think it was, against lefties in 2023. Christian Walker cleanup, Lourdes Gurriel in the 5-hole. Still have Eugenio Suarez hitting 6th. He was at 114 against lefties last year. And then at the bottom, you've got Emmanuel Rivera, Jake McCarthy getting into the lineup, playing right field, forcing Corbin Carroll to center. I have Alec Thomas out of the lineup against lefties, which as of right now, I think is kind of how you'd have to plan it out. And then Geraldo Perdomo, who, as we said earlier, not an ideal guy to have in your lineup against lefties, but someone that D-backs don't really have any other options there. They kind of tried the Jordan Lawler thing against lefties down the stretch. It didn't look so good. They pulled the plug on that. Perdomo was, playing against pretty much every pitcher when all was said and done. So yeah, this is what things look like against lefties. And what are your thoughts here, Jack? What kind of stands out to you as far as the challenges that they're facing here?
Well, I mean, the first thing that stands out is that they were really good against lefties. You look at the top part of that order. That's the top 1 through 6 is not bad, right?
Right.
If you go back again to 2022, Suarez killed lefties.
Right.
So if he can get back to doing that, that really gives him a good bump. The other thing is look, you have to have a backup shortstop. Right. And right now, the way the 40-man roster stands, it's going to be either Lawler or Blaze Alexander, right? So one of those 2 guys is going to be on the roster as the backup shortstop. A lot of people will argue and debate about whether Lawler should go back to Reno and spend a little bit more time there or just put him on the roster and let him try to fight for his playing time now. But one way or the other, whoever that guy is, excuse me, is probably going to end up spelling Perdomo a fair amount.
Right.
I would guess.
Yeah.
The other thing is Jake McCarthy it's a square peg in a round hole, isn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't
we're
make
starting
sense.
him against lefties, and we're not starting him against righties. It's pretty weird.
I mean, I know he had that, the good split in 2020.